to get out in front of this and, tried to persuade Netflix not to come forward with it. I think it's an interesting argument because what they're claiming is, Curtis Jackson, aka 50 Cent, has had a long-standing, animosity against Diddy and sort of vice versa. And because he's at the helm, they're arguing this can't be taken seriously. This should sort of be seen as propaganda. And one of the things that Netflix hit back with was, yes, he's the executive producer. He doesn't necessarily have creative control. And that's something.
A taped warning coming from behind prison bars has reignited a secret many believed was sealed for good. The public narrative claimed Sean Combs had been contained to silence by steel doors and the collapse of his empire. Yet distorted audio reportedly traced back to Fort Dix suggests his influence may still stretch beyond the chapel library job he now holds. This development was never expected. A conversation filled with strange references to worm food and vitamin E has become a focal point in a Netflix documentary backed by his longtime rival 50 Cent. Ironically, footage, recorded by a videographer Combs hired to chronicle his comeback now, appears to reveal parts of his legal playbook and has sparked a cease and desist clash with Netflix. The leak surfaced alongside a fresh lawsuit alleging Combs once warned a frightened individual by invoking Tupac Shakur, suggesting that if such a figure could be targeted, anyone could. Meanwhile, reports describe disputes over family finances and unpaid staff. A man confronting asset forfeiture and the risk of being summoned in a historic homicide case would not casually record threats unless he felt cornered. This situation suggests more than decline. It signals an empire unraveling internally, and the most serious revelations may still be unseen.
New audio from the Diddy trial, and it is pretty explosive. This is audio of a voicemail that Diddy left to the Jane Doe who's been testifying in this trial for the last couple days. And he sounds really annoyed. He's talking about her maybe giving him the silent treatment, and his response is, I got a busy life, I can't be dealing with your silent treatment, and we got to.
The recording itself is muffled, shaped by prison phone limitations, yet the speaker's tone is recognizable. It echoes someone who once dominated boardrooms, now speaking quietly from inside Fort Dix, where he assists with films and religious programming during an 18-month rehabilitation period. The fall from leading Bad Boy Entertainment to this role is dramatic. Still, the circulating call does not reflect defeat. It sounds calculated. Odd phrases about worm food, vitamin E special serum, and protecting property from insects have fueled speculation online, with many believing they serve as coded messages. Despite legal efforts to block the footage, Combs appears convinced he maintains leverage. The contrast between his current duties inside a chapel media room and the certainty in his voice raises doubts. Either his confidence is misplaced or he holds knowledge hidden from the public. The controversial footage was never meant for release. Combs reportedly brought in a videographer before his federal indictment, intending to shape the story before authorities intervened. Known for mastering public image, he seemingly believed documentation could shield him from prosecution. Cameras captured exchanges with his attorney Mark Agnifilo discussing defense strategy, potential indictments, and media response. Normally, such talks would remain protected, yet the presence of a third party complicates that privilege. Legal analysts argue that allowing a camera operator inside private meetings may have opened the door for disclosure. When documentary producers sought material, someone provided it. The recordings meant to protect him now headline a production overseen by 50 Cent titled The Reckoning, which quickly climbed to the top of Netflix rankings after release. Combs' representatives issued a cease and desist claiming improper acquisition, while the platform maintains it secured the content legitimately. Industry observers are less focused on the damage and more on identifying who leaked it and for what reason.
Hard to say because there's still such a big question mark in the air because, Curtis Jackson, aka 50 Cent, is one of the executive producers on this series. Him, the director, Netflix in general is not saying where they got this footage, only that it was obtained legally. Diddy's side is saying this is coming from a videographer I hired. I know we'll get into the cease and desist. One of the arguments they make is, this is subject to NDAs or agreements that the videographer had signed with Diddy because he was, employed by Diddy.
What appears within that material suggests the leak may have been deliberate rather than opportunistic. The footage portrays Combs restless and dissatisfied with his legal approach, urging a tougher media counterattack before his arrest. At one stage, he reportedly presses his team to find someone skilled in aggressive publicity tactics to challenge the mounting allegations. His tone conveys belief in winning a public narrative battle even as federal scrutiny intensified. That assurance aligns with patterns described in the wave of civil suits filed against him. One lawsuit brought by Steve Otis claims that during a 2012 meeting in a Midtown hotel suite, Combs referenced the unresolved killing of Tupac Shakur to intimidate him following an alleged assault. The complaint states that Combs suggested if such an act could occur, others were not beyond reach. Otis asserts fear kept him silent for years, believing the threat implied access to power and influence capable of harm. Only after Combs was incarcerated did he feel secure enough to step forward. As the documentary streams and the prison call circulates, additional accusations have emerged, reinforcing interpretations that the language on that audio carried deeper meaning.
Continue to engage in all these freak-offs with him, and he sounds really pissed off.
Hey, I really don't know what's going on with you, but I just want to just give you a heads up that I'm about to really disappear on you. You feel me? I'm not going to be playing these games with you at all, at all. So I don't know, you think you silent treating me, and you think I'm going to be, nah, you'll have a rude.
The reference to Shakur continues to resurface, challenging long-standing denials. Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, who awaits trial connected to the 1996 shooting of Tupac Shakur, has repeatedly alleged that Combs offered payment to target both the rapper and his associate Suge Knight. Over the years, Davis provided interviews and statements, including discussions with Los Angeles investigators, naming his nephew Orlando Anderson as the shooter. Previously, many dismissed his claims as self-promotion. However, circumstances have evolved. His attorney Michael Pandolo has indicated that Combs could potentially be summoned as a witness. If Combs were to testify and deny the allegations, it might introduce doubt. Refusal or inconsistent testimony could create serious consequences. Authorities in Las Vegas have not charged Combs in relation to the Shakur investigation, yet the possibility of involvement as a witness or person of interest alters the stakes. Already defending his assets and freedom, he now confronts the chance of being pulled into a decades-old homicide case under intense public scrutiny. The alleged threat described by Otis no longer appears casual, but instead hints at a perspective that treated tragedy as leverage.
Following breaking news out of New York City, the jury in the Sean Diddy Combs racketeering, conspiracy, and trafficking trial has reached a verdict on 4 of the 5.
The financial strain closing in around Combs appears just as intense as the legal battles. Individuals familiar with his operations claim control of his money now rests with TriStar Sports and Entertainment Group, which has reportedly restricted access to funds. Some employees say payments have stalled and at least one person has stepped away. Lawyers managing the growing stack of civil cases are said to be waiting months for compensation. Even family requests for money have allegedly faced review. When funds were sought for a dinner in New York before sentencing, they were instructed to submit documentation, and approval was initially refused. The image of a billionaire directing moves from a cell clashes with reports of strict oversight by outside administrators. According to Forbes, his wealth, once estimated at $740 million, fell to roughly $400 million. Now even that figure may be threatened. The Justice Department is pursuing forfeiture actions, arguing that enterprises such as Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, and his interests in Ciroc and Revolt were tied to unlawful activity. If successful, authorities could target properties including a Los Angeles estate worth over $60 million, a Miami Beach home, a private jet, and other remaining assets. The executive, who once traveled by helicopter between meetings, is now reportedly operating within limits set by court-appointed supervisors.
So he outlines allegations of battery, assault, violence, physical and psychological abuse, labor trafficking, he says. And a lot of what Deontay Nash says in this complaint mirrors testimony that we heard during that trial, both from Nash and from others, like Sean Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, who was...
The picture formed by the documentary, the lawsuits, and the leaked audio suggests a personality that once felt untouchable but now appears exposed. Kirk Burroughs, co-founder of Bad Boy Records, appears in the Netflix series, claiming he was pressured out of his 25% ownership through intimidation. He alleges that after being removed, he was pushed aside in the industry and endured years of hardship while Combs expanded his influence. The production connects those early accusations of forceful tactics to the current federal charges, portraying a pattern that stretches across decades. The defense maintains that many accusations are civil disputes brought by unhappy former partners or unnamed accusers, yet the scale is striking. Close to 70 civil suits remain active, covering allegations from harassment to assault. Cassie Ventura, whose 2023 lawsuit triggered a wave of claims, testified about gatherings that allegedly lasted for days where participants were pressured into acts without consent. Prosecutors labeled these events freak-offs, describing detailed planning, substances recordings, and medical recovery afterward. Investigators reportedly seized large quantities of supplies during searches. Although a jury cleared Combs of the gravest accusations, convictions confirmed that individuals were transported across state lines for activities authorities deemed unlawful. Regardless of verdicts, his public standing has suffered severe damage.
This is the flight where Diddy said to her,
showed her
she
the video,
testified
showed her
that
the freak-off video.
He showed her a video of a freak-off that she participated in and said, if you don't participate in another freak-off when we get to New York, I'm going to put this video out. I'm going to send it to your mother.
And that's coercion.
She testified
if it's true.
to that.
If the jury
believed her,
yeah,
that's coercion. They would have.
Observers now question whether Combs still possesses the backing or funding required for a return. His lawyer Mark Agnifilo has recently represented figures such as Harvey Weinstein, adding to scrutiny surrounding his client list. Family members continue prison visits, yet reports indicate financial support flowing outward has slowed significantly. Publicist Judah Engelmayer states obligations are being met and no one is abandoning the team, but conflicting accounts persist. If staff wages are delayed and attorneys are working without steady retainers, the structure may be weaker than it appears. The unusual language captured in the prison call, mentioning samples and worm food, hints that Combs believes he retains leverage. The suggestion is that documents, recordings, or sensitive material exist that could harm others if revealed. It mirrors a tactic often used by someone under pressure, ensuring any downfall carries consequences for others. Such a strategy depends on convincing allies that the threat is credible and on maintaining loyalty beyond prison walls.
Judge didn't go into not really the judge, the government didn't go into too many details about the extent of the plea offer, but one thing that they had said was pretty much that under the plea offer, he would be facing less time than he's facing if he would have gone to trial. So when the allocution portion came, Diddy stood up, the judge kind of read him everything that he had needed to read to him, just about whether or not.
Silence from parts of the entertainment world speaks loudly. During the call, Combs referenced names including Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, and Leonardo DiCaprio in remarks that sounded indirect and unclear. The comments implied others might share vulnerability if he decided to speak openly. Whether this reflects suspicion or knowledge is uncertain. After the documentary release, several prominent figures moved to create distance. Will Smith publicly stated he had no involvement with Puffy, drawing widespread attention. The effort to separate from former associations is evident as images and captions from past events disappear. The social isolation surrounding Combs appears nearly complete.
They needed to show that there was an agreement, that the organization knew what it was doing, that it was an enterprise, not in law, but in fact, that people understood the object of the enterprise, which was to promote Sean Combs and his brands and sort of fulfill any deviant desires he may have had, and then to cover up any crimes committed over the course of fulfilling those desires.
Despite circumstances, the voice on the recording conveys energy rather than surrender. References to eyes wide shut and remarks about performers unaware of being recorded suggest an approach not yet fully revealed. The risk for Combs is that prolonged confinement reduces bargaining power. Individuals he might expose continue forward while legal processes advance toward asset seizure and possible testimony in an unrelated homicide proceeding. Time works against him. Still, the audio indicates he has not conceded. Calls continue, warnings persist, and he projects intent. When someone accustomed to shaping narratives can control only a telephone conversation, the statements that follow often carry urgency. In a case, this volatile urgency can be the most unpredictable factor.
Same kind of extortion that we heard when Cassie took the stand and testified on that airplane ride back from France. Diddy said, "You don't do a freak off, I'm going to release one of the freak off videos that you are profiled in and humiliate."
Trouble within the enterprise did not begin with indictments or hidden recordings. Allegations trace back to the early days of the empire. Kirk Burroughs maintains he was forced out of Bad Boy Records in 1996 under threat, losing the stake he helped create and facing years of instability while the company prospered. Once dismissed as resentment, that account now resonates differently. Placed alongside the Steve Otis lawsuit alleging intimidation tied to the memory of Tupac Shakur, a broader image forms of tactics relying on pressure rather than persuasion. The 1991 City College tragedy, where 9 people died in a stampede at a basketball event organized with Combs' involvement, also lingers in the background. No criminal case followed, yet civil actions continued for years as families sought answers. The recurring pattern critics highlight is crisis occurring while leadership emerges largely untouched. The distinction today is that avenues of escape appear narrower.
He talks in this complaint read about fearing for his life, not just while he was working for Sean Combs, but afterwards. He tells stories about physical violence, about a time where he actually had to drive 100 miles an hour to try to escape Mr. Combs, and says he didn't call the police because he worried that that would be a...
Perhaps the most unsettling question is not what Combs has forfeited, but what he may still possess. The coded phrases in the prison audio and claims of preserved samples point to the possibility of stored information. In an image-driven industry, whoever holds secrets holds influence. Behind bars, that balance shifts. Former allies may weigh whether protection remains worthwhile. Financial restrictions imposed by TriStar Sports and Entertainment Group, delayed payments, and family struggles suggest deliberate containment. The documentary marked the first strike, and the leaked recording intensified matters. What unfolds next depends on whether those mentioned believe he can still inflict damage or whether they consider him powerless. If someone carrying knowledge of others loses the resources to guard it, outcomes become uncertain. Are the warnings about worm food evidence of hidden proof, or simply a final bluff from someone cornered? Will the celebrities stepping away maintain silence, or will another voice emerge first? Share your thoughts below about who may have betrayed Diddy and who might feel uneasy now. The situation continues to evolve, and another revelation could shift everything. Stay tuned.